It started on a crisp autumn morning when the invitation, or more accurately, the lack of one, fell like a cold stone in my chest. I, Rosalind Mercer, had always believed that family meant unity, meant backing one another through thick and thin, especially when the moments that mattered most came calling. But that morning, as I scrolled through my messages for the third time and found nothing but bills and overdue reminders, I realized that my place at Grandma Agnes's funeral had been erased. No card, no call, nothing. Just Grandma's pale, folded announcement in the family WhatsApp group, minus me. My hands shook as I read the terse message posted by Aunt Lorraine. Service at St. Mark's this Saturday. Casual, flowers welcome. Please RSVP. Flowers. RSVP. Nothing about me. I closed my eyes and saw Grandma's warm smile, the way her eyes lit up when she told tales of her childhood on that sprawling estate in Devonshire. I remembered the afternoons spent in her sunlit conservatory, tinkering with begonias and fuchsias, while she taught me how to graft roses. I had been her pride and joy, the granddaughter who understood the magic that bloomed in her greenhouse. And yet here I was, shut out. No reason given, no explanation offered, just the cold deletion of my invitation. I stared at the screen until my phone went black, breathing in and out until my heartbeat steadied. Then I rose, buttoned my coat, and walked into the day that felt suddenly hollow, without the anchor of that family gathering. I trudged through the damp streets of my neighborhood in London, the city awakening around me as shops opened, and the early commuters took to the tubes. I hailed a cab to the small law firm where I'd been working since a botched startup left me scraping by. The firm specialized in estates and trusts. A cruel irony, perhaps, given my own predicament. Sitting at my cramped desk, I tried to focus on the stack of case files in front of me, disputes over sibling inheritances, contests between estranged cousins, elderly clients questioning the validity of handwritten wills. The irony was suffocating. I forced myself to sort through the legal jargon, the cold precision of statutory clauses and precedents. It helped, in a way, to lose myself in someone else's family drama. But beneath the surface, a slow burning determination took hold. That evening, after the stale office lights flickered off, I unlocked the front door of my modest flat and tossed my bag onto the sofa. I'd left a message for Aunt Lorraine. Short, composed, respectful, inquiring if there had been some mistake. No reply. I decided then that I wouldn't wait until the funeral to demand answers. I'd find my own way in. By midnight, I was seated at Grandma's old oak desk, which I'd inherited when she told me I was mature enough to handle real responsibility. The desk sat in a corner of my living room, cluttered with my accountant's invoices and unopened letters. I cleared a space and pulled out the slim folder, where I kept copies of her estate documents. Wills, codicils, power of attorney. I ran my finger over the seal on the latest will, dated just 6 months earlier. In it, Grandma Agnes had painstakingly bequeathed her entire Devonshire property, valued at nearly £3 million, to me and me alone. I reread the relevant clause. I leave, devise, and bequeath all interests in the property known as Windermere Manor, including appurtenances, fixtures, and lands adjacent, unto Rosalind Alexandra Mercer, to be held in trust for her and her lawful heirs. Aunt Lorraine had been mentioned as executor, but the beneficiary was only my name. No ghosts of cousins, no conditional grants, just me, the granddaughter she trusted implicitly. A thrill raced through me. I closed the folder and brushed imaginary dust from my hands. Grandma had prepared for every eventuality, every family squabble, every jealous whisper. She had seen what might come and acted to protect me. The knowledge made the betrayal sting sharper. They weren't just excluding me from her funeral, they were trying to erase me from her legacy. I leaned back and thought about my options. The funeral was mere days away. They expected me to stay away, but they hadn't counted on my stubbornness. I would arrive, of course, on my own terms. And I would do more than sit in some second pew and bite my tongue as Aunt Lorraine draped a ribbon over her shoulder and read the eulogy I had written. No, I would show up prepared. I would show up with the deed to her mansion. I would show up as the rightful heir. The plan took shape in my mind over the next 48 hours. I secured a taxi that would take me directly to St. Mark's, avoiding the wringing hands of well-meaning cousins at the station. I had the original deed certified at the registry office. No chance of it being dismissed as an old document. I borrowed a sleek black blazer from a friend, a small detail that would command respect and draw eyes, exactly the reaction I wanted when I strode down that aisle. On the morning of the funeral, rain whispered against the windows as I buttoned my blazer. My reflection in the mirror was calm, composed, determined. I tucked the deed into a leather portfolio, along with a pen, because after I spoke, there would be paperwork to sign. When I reached St. Mark's, the drizzle had soaked the stone steps and pooled on the pavement. A slender line of mourners snaked around the entrance, pallbearers, clergy, and a scattering of relatives in subdued hues. The stained glass windows glowed with muted light that painted everyone in deep blues and golds, giving the scene a surreal hush. I watched Aunt Lorraine emerge, her posture stiff with solemnity. She paused at the top of the steps, glancing around. She wore that familiar triumphant smile, like a queen who'd seized the throne. Beneath the polished marble angels and oak pews, I felt a fire ignite. I stepped forward, exhaling slowly, and walked through the church doors. Heads turned. Hushed whispers rippled like waves. I could taste their surprise, their confusion, and when I reached Aunt Lorraine, I squared my shoulders. "Good morning," I said softly. "I'm here for Grandma's funeral. I have her final wishes with me." Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Aunt Lorraine's face went pale, an unconscious tremor at the corner of her lip. I opened the portfolio and slid the deed across her immaculately pressed sleeve. Eyes widened. Murmurs rose, and in that moment, as the rain tapped against the windows, I felt the weight of generations shift. Because Grandma Agnes's most enduring gift wasn't her mansion, it was her faith in me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. I still feel the echo of that gasp, like the world held its breath just for me. The hush that fell over St. Mark's was so absolute, I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I looked up from the deed clutched in my gloved hand to see faces frozen in disbelief, cousins who spat at me in childhood, aunts who'd whispered behind my back, and Aunt Lorraine herself, rigid as a marble statue. The minister faltered, his sermon abandoned as he stared at the legal document. Then, Aunt Lorraine's lips parted, and she opened her mouth to speak. But I preempted her, voice calm yet firm. "I know this comes as a surprise," I said, walking slowly toward the front pew. My heels clicked on the stone floor, each step echoing like a drumbeat of gathering power. Grandma Agnes was deliberate in her wishes. She trusted me to honor her legacy. I intend to do exactly that. A tremor ran through the room. Someone whispered, "But what about Lorraine's duties?" Heads turned toward Aunt Lorraine, whose cheeks had flushed a deep rose. She looked lost. I pressed on. "The will names me as sole beneficiary. Aunt Lorraine, as executor, you have a duty to transfer ownership. We can discuss the particulars after the service if you like." Silence. Then, distant thunder rolled outside, as though the heavens themselves responded to the upheaval. I retreated to my seat, sliding into the pew beside my trembling cousin Ella. She pressed my hand and mouthed, "You go, Rosalind." I nodded, grateful for the lone spark of solidarity. The service resumed almost mechanically. Hymns were sung in faltering voices, prayers were murmured half-heartedly, and the eulogy, once slated for Aunt Lorraine, was delivered by the minister. He spoke of Grandma's boundless kindness, her love of roses, her unwavering family devotion. With each word, I felt the truth of his tribute, yet the irony stung like a fresh bruise. When we filed out into the damp afternoon air, umbrellas bloomed like black flowers. The pallbearers carried the casket down the aisle, and I followed, a subtle force drawing every eye. Paparazzi. Uninvited, but never to be underestimated. Crowded at the gate, their lenses capturing my stride, my resolute face. Outside, the congregation gathered in clusters. Whispers swirled like autumn leaves. Who was that woman? What deed? Did Grandma really leave everything to her? Aunt Lorraine hovered near the entrance, arms crossed, eyes darting. I studied her face. She was retreating behind formal condolences, but insecurity flickered in her gaze. I approached. Lorraine, I began, using her name with deliberate familiarity. The registry office confirmed the deed this morning. We can settle the legal transfer now. She bristled, lips thinning. This isn't the time for lawsuits, she spat softly. I squared my shoulders. It is precisely the time. Grandma wouldn't have wanted anything delayed. I'd appreciate your cooperation. Aunt Lorraine's hand trembled as she reached for her clutch. She withdrew a crumpled sheet. Grandma's handwritten memoir, perhaps? Or a codicil that might override the deed? I held my breath. She unfolded the paper. Her voice quivered as she read aloud. I leave the conservatory and greenhouse to my daughter, Lorraine Mercer, and in the event of Rosalind's incapacity, the property shall pass to Lorraine. A murmur arose. I recognized it. Lorraine's handwriting, but the ink was fresh, the script shaky. A late edition, made in haste, perhaps? The timing was suspect. I stepped forward. This codicil is dated this morning, I said, voice low. Signed and witnessed? She met my gaze, defiant. Signed by 2 witnesses, Cousin Henry and Reverend Matthews. I turned to Henry, a tall man in a navy suit, his face a study in surprise. He stuttered, I was asked to sign this at the graveyard chapel. Reverend insisted it was urgent. Reverend Matthews stood behind him, shifting uncomfortably. Ms. Mercer, I only did what Grandma had asked. A cold clarity washed over me. They were panicking, rewriting history to strip me of my inheritance. The betrayal cut deeper than before. I raised my voice so everyone could hear. If Grandma wanted a codicil, she would have discussed it with her lawyer, not scribbled it at the last moment under pressure. We'll need to verify its authenticity. Eyes fixed on us. Aunt Lorraine paled. Henry opened his mouth, but no words came. The Reverend's collar felt tighter than ever. A streak of lightning lit the sky, followed by a roar of thunder. The heavens seemed to underscore the unfolding drama. I folded my arms. Until then, the original will stands. And so does the deed. Aunt Lorraine's rigid facade cracked. She took a step forward, face taut with fury and fear. I won't let you steal Grandma's legacy, I declared. Not today. She opened her mouth, ready to strike back. Before her words could form, a roar from the crowd cut through us. A sudden shout of recognition as one of the guests pointed toward the mansion gates in the distance. A sleek black car rolled up the drive, its headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. The driver's door swung open, revealing a figure in a sharp suit holding a camera and a legal portfolio. At his shoulder hung the firm's insignia. The solicitors I'd hired to testify the codicil was a forgery. Aunt Lorraine's eyes widened. I felt vindicated and terrified at once. The game had just shifted, and none of us knew who would emerge the victor. I inhaled, steeling myself for the battle ahead. Let's go, I whispered to the solicitor. It's time to prove Grandma told the truth. As I followed him toward the car, the first drops of rain began to fall in earnest. The sky wept as if for the storm to come. And I knew this was only the beginning. The rain had turned into a steady downpour when we pulled up to Grandma's sprawling Devonshire estate, Windermere Manor, its gray stone walls swallowed in mist and shadows. My solicitor, Mr. Aldridge, stepped out first, clutching the briefcase that contained evidence of the forged codicil. I followed close behind, each step crunching gravel under my heels. Behind us, the guests, family members, and onlookers watched in muted silence from under umbrellas. A gust of wind rattled the gates as Aunt Lorraine emerged from the assembly, her umbrella fluttering like a tattered banner. Her eyes, dark with unresolved anger, met mine. Without a word, she turned and strode up the drive, leading the procession of mourners toward the grand entrance. Inside the foyer, the air was cool and smelled faintly of dust and old mahogany. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their painted eyes seemingly following our every move. I paused at a large painting of Grandma Agnes as a young woman, standing in front of Windermere's rose garden, an image of grace and authority. My throat tightened. Mr. Aldridge cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" he asked quietly, nodding toward the drawing room. I followed him, the weight of 100 eyes pressing on my back. In the drawing room, long sofas upholstered in deep crimson faced a marble fireplace where embers from an earlier fire still glowed. On the center table lay teacups and a silver tray of petit fours, left untouched in the morning's rush. Aunt Lorraine stood near the fireplace, arms folded, flanked by Cousin Henry and Reverend Matthews. As we entered, she forced a polite smile. "I see you brought reinforcements," she said, voice taut. Mr. Aldridge set down his briefcase and began laying out documents, photographs, witness statements, and the original will with its ironclad witnesses. "This will was signed 6 months ago in the presence of 2 independent solicitors," he explained. "We have affidavits from both, confirming no codicil was drafted at that time." Lorraine's eyes darted between the documents and me. "What are you suggesting?" she snapped. "That the codicil you produced is a forgery," Aldridge replied calmly. "We have handwriting analysis confirming that the ink on your codicil is of recent manufacture. Additionally, our investigation shows that Reverend Matthews was approached less than 24 hours ago to secure false testimony." Reverend Matthews shook his head, voice trembling. I didn't know it was wrong. Grandma said it had to be done." I stepped forward. The hush returned, heavier than before. "Grandma trusted me. I honored her wishes. You and Reverend Matthews tried to rewrite history for your own gain." Anger surged through Lorraine's features, but she forced her composure. "If this is a legal matter," she said, voice brittle, "we should settle it in court." Aldridge offered a thin smile. "Of course, but considering the urgency and the funeral costs, it might be best to finalize the transfer privately. You sign the deed, acknowledge no other codicil exists, and we settle the estate. That way, we avoid a prolonged legal battle." Lorraine's lips pressed together. Henry's shoulder twitched. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. I inhaled slowly, feeling both triumph and exhaustion. "That's acceptable," I said. "As long as my rights are respected." Aldridge slid a fresh deed across the table. Lorraine stared at it, then at me. After a breath that seemed to stretch on forever, she picked up the pen and signed. Her hand shook, but she signed. The moment she did, a murmur rippled through the gathering storm outside. The first thunderclap shook the panes. Lorraine sighed, abandoning her last defenses. "Fine," she whispered. "You win." I closed my eyes and let the tide of relief wash over me. Grandma's spirit felt near, as though she stood behind me, smiling. But as I exhaled, a soft click echoed in the silent room. We all turned toward the wide French doors leading to the front lawn. Standing there, silhouetted by the flickering lightning, was a figure I never expected, my estranged sister, Anya. She had left home years ago without a word, chasing dreams that fractured our family forever. Her coat was soaked, her hair plastered to her face, but her eyes shone with something fierce and unyielding. Anya stepped inside, water dripping from her sleeves. She locked eyes with me, and in that charged silence, I realized that Grandma's legacy wasn't just about property. It was about healing old wounds. With a voice that shook, Anya said, "Rosalind, I'm sorry I wasn't here for Grandma, but I'm here now." Thunder rumbled as the storm outside reached a crescendo. The room brimmed with tension and possibility. And in that moment, I knew the real journey was just beginning. The thunderstorm raged outside as Anya stepped fully into the drawing room, water dripping onto the Persian rug. Every eye fell on her, the prodigal sister who had vanished without warning 5 years ago. Silence pressed heavy. Even the crackle of the dying embers in the fireplace seemed muted. I swallowed hard, my throat knotting with a swirl of emotions. Relief to see her alive. Confusion at her timing. Anger that she'd abandoned us, only to return at our greatest moment of vulnerability. Yet beneath it all, a fragile thread of hope. Grandma had always dreamed of mending our fractured family. Anya drew a trembling breath, her soaked hair clinging to her face. She looked at each of us in turn. Aunt Lorraine clutching her umbrella, Henry shifting uncomfortably, Reverend Matthews averting his gaze. Then her eyes met mine, fierce with determination. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she began, voice quaking, "but I couldn't stay away when I heard about Grandma's passing." Her admission cut me deeper than any betrayal could. Memories flooded, the last Christmas she'd stormed out, suitcase in hand, slamming the door on our childhood home. Mom's tears as Dad helplessly watched her leave, the endless nights of worrying until her phone went unanswered, and me, furious and hurt, refusing to reach out. Anya's gaze held mine, raw with regret. I had to build a life of my own, away from the constant comparisons, the whispers that my success was inherited and undeserved. I thought if I could show them all I was full of fight, they'd stop doubting me. A silence followed her confession, a long, suffocating pause where the storm and the past collided. I took a single step toward her, the wooden floor creaking. "You never told me you felt that way," I whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. I was ashamed. I thought if I admitted my doubts, they'd confirm everyone else's fears, that I was a burden, just like you. Aunt Lorraine's umbrella clattered as she stepped forward. "This isn't the time for confessions," she snapped. But Grandma's portrait above us seemed to glow with a gentle warmth, as though urging us toward reconciliation. I took another step, closing the distance between me and Anya. "Let her speak," I said, voice low but uncompromising. "This is Grandma's house, too." Henry shifted, giving Reverend Matthews a pointed look. The minister cleared his throat, suddenly aware he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Anya exhaled, steeling herself. She met my gaze again. "I've spent the last 5 years traveling, working odd jobs, volunteering in orphanages, teaching English in remote villages, anything to prove to myself that I was someone." Her words painted a vivid picture: dusty classrooms in Rajasthan, cramped shelters in Romania, the glow of gratitude in children's eyes. I could almost see her standing before chalkboards, guiding students, forging a path that distanced her from our suffocating legacy. "But I always thought of you, Rosalind," she continued, voice softening. "I watched your posts, your achievements at the law firm, your speeches at charity events. I realized you were carrying the weight of our family's expectations, the weight I ran from." Her eyes glistened. "I'm sorry I never reached out. I'm sorry I let Grandma go without saying goodbye to me. I'm sorry for every time I doubted you." A flicker of anger ignited in me, but I swallowed it. Grandma's last wish had been unity, and here, in her beloved home, I had to honor that. I placed a hand on Anya's shoulder. "I'm sorry, too," I whispered, voice thick. "I hated you for leaving, but I missed you more than I can say." Aunt Lorraine watched, mouth agape. Henry and the Reverend exchanged glances so wide they might have popped out of their sockets. The storm outside subsided to a drizzle, and a shaft of pale moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating Anya's face. Aunt Lorraine cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should continue this in the library," she suggested briskly, gesturing toward the oak-paneled alcove beyond. We all followed her, filing down the hallway lined with leather-bound tomes and old family journals. The library door thudded shut behind us, sealing out the last echoes of thunder. Inside, I sank into a high-backed armchair. Anya settled opposite me, wringing her hands. The firelight danced across the room, casting long shadows on the bookshelves. Lorraine's voice, curt and formal, echoed off the walls. "Now that the legalities are settled, I expect both of you to show decorum. This estate must be maintained, and any disputes must be resolved quickly." Quote, her tone brooked no discussion. It was clear she intended to oversee every aspect of the manor, down to the greenhouse where Grandma's roses bloomed. I glared at her but took a breath. "Aunt Lorraine, this is our grandmother's home. Anya and I both deserve to share it. We should honor Grandma's memory together." Lorraine's lips curled. "The estate is Rosalind's. You have no legal claim." The room crackled with tension. Anya's shoulders slumped, disappointment etching her features. I squared my shoulders. "My grandmother named me beneficiary, yes, but she also left her love, her memories, and her home for her family to cherish. You can't deny me my rights, and I won't deny Anya her chance to be part of this." Lorraine's eyes flared. She opened her mouth to retort, but a sudden flicker of movement at the window caught everyone's attention. A flash of light, a new car pulling up the drive, a sleek silver SUV, rain-slicked. The driver door opened, and a figure stepped out, silhouetted against the manor's lanterns. A low hum of the SUV's engine echoed through the courtyard as the passenger door opened, revealing a tall man in a bespoke charcoal suit and wireframe glasses. His hair was flecked with silver at the temples, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being heard without raising his voice. Anya and I exchanged glances. Aunt Lorraine's posture stiffened. Henry straightened his tie as if preparing for a duel. Reverend Matthews clutched the front of his crisp collar, while Mr. Aldridge, who had been standing near the drawing-room door, stepped forward with a curious frown. The man approached the threshold, lifting a gloved hand to shield raindrops from his face. He nodded curtly in Lorraine's direction before his gaze swept over the room until it rested squarely on me. "Ms. Mercer?" he asked in a smooth baritone. "I'm Julian Pierce, senior counsel from Harrington and Blake." My breath caught. Harrington and Blake was the prestigious firm Grandma Agnes had consulted for years. They oversaw her philanthropic foundation and managed high-profile trusts. Seeing their counsel here signaled that Grandma's legacy had layers even Aunt Lorraine had never glimpsed. Julian stepped forward, unconcerned by the rain that still dripped from his coat. He opened a slim leather portfolio and withdrew a sealed envelope stamped with the black and gold crest of the firm. "Ms. Agnes left instructions with our offices," he said, voice steady. "I apologize for my tardiness. There was a delay in verifying your identity. But the contents of this envelope must be presented now, in front of the entire family." Lorraine's face paled as the envelope was passed into her trembling hands. She hesitated, glancing at each of us. Finally, she broke the wax seal and unfolded the letter inside. A heavy silence stretched, punctuated only by the soft patter of rain against the window panes. Aunt Lorraine cleared her throat and began reading aloud. "To my beloved family, if you are reading this, I have embarked on the next great adventure. But my heart remains here, within these walls and among you. The deed I gave to Rosalind reflects her strength and my faith in her. But I have more to entrust: the Agnes Mercer Foundation, the ongoing projects in East London, and legacy properties in Scotland. These must be administered by those who embody my values: honesty, compassion, and resilience. Therefore, I appoint Rosalind Mercer as chair of the foundation and trustee of the Scotland estates. But, to ensure unity, I extend honorary co-trust to both Rosalind and Anya, so long as they work together for the good of those in need." My heart thundered in my chest. Anya's eyes glistened, and I felt a rush of gratitude and awe for Grandma's foresight. Lorraine's voice wavered as she continued. "Should either party refuse to collaborate, the inherited interest shall revert to the foundation to be used for charity." This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe! Now, back to the story. The middle of the storm outside seemed to pause as we absorbed the implications. The weight of responsibility settled on both our shoulders, an offer to heal old wounds but tethered with Grandma's stern warning. Aunt Lorraine folded the letter carefully, her knuckles white. She looked at Anya and me, an unreadable emotion flickering in her eyes. "Ms. Mercer, Ms. Anya," Julian said, voice gentle yet firm. "The Foundation's first board meeting is tomorrow at Harrington and Blake's offices. I trust you will both attend." Anya's lips trembled into a smile. I nodded, determined. The choice was clear. We could honor Grandma's legacy and rebuild our bond, or risk losing everything she worked for. Thunder rumbled far off, but this time it felt like a herald, not a threat. As lightning danced across the courtyard, I realized that the true inheritance was more than stone walls and rose gardens. It was the chance to write a new chapter together, one built on trust instead of betrayal. Yet, as we made our way toward the library door, a shadow shifted behind the tall windows. In the corner of my eye, I saw a figure slipping away, someone who had watched us all night and now held a secret that could unravel everything. I paused, glancing back at the silent window. My pulse quickened. Who was that watcher? The answer lay hidden in the depths of Windermere Manor's darkest wing. The library's heavy oak door closed behind us with a definitive thud, severing the echoes of the drawing room's revelations. Anya and I exchanged a glance, equal parts exhilaration and apprehension. Grandma's final missive had woven us together as trustees, bound by duty and the specter of the Foundation's charitable cause. It was the lifeline we both needed, and perhaps the first real chance at redemption for our fractured bond. Julian Pierce lingered at the threshold, gaze thoughtful. "I'll escort Aunt Lorraine and Mr. Aldridge to finalize the documents," he said, voice low. "You two should prepare for the board meeting." Aunt Lorraine hovered near the fireplace, her arms folded. "I intend to involve myself fully in the Foundation's activities," she declared. "After all, I am of Grandma's bloodline." Anya's shoulders tensed, ready for conflict, but I touched her arm gently. "Let's save our energy," I whispered. "We have more pressing matters." Lorraine's lipsticked lips curved in a thin smile. "Very well, but remember, the Foundation is my legacy too." With a curt nod, Julian led Lorraine and Aldridge down the hallway. The corridor swallowed their hurried footsteps and distant voices. Anya exhaled, leaning against a towering bookcase. "I can't believe Grandma thought of everything." I nodded, pacing beside the fireplace. She knew how divided we were. She created rules to force us to cooperate. We stood in silence for a moment, the firelight flickering across the leather-bound volumes. The rest of the manor seemed to hold its breath, as though waiting for our next move. I turned to Anya, resolute. "We need to find out who's watching us. Secret alliances could undo Grandma's plans." Anya frowned. "First, let's gather what evidence we can. Dinner will be served soon. We can't search every dark corner while we dine." Quote, I glanced at the mantel clock, 7:45 p.m. The staff would bring dinner at 8. The manor had an old-world schedule that insisted on tradition, even in the midst of family upheaval. "Then we have 15 minutes, I said. Anya nodded and headed toward the grand windows overlooking the courtyard. I followed, scanning the manicured gardens where the storm's aftermath glistened on hedges and pathways. "See anything?" I asked. Anya pointed toward the East Wing's windows. "That pane is cracked." Sure enough, a thin fracture spidered across the glass. It was new. No dust had settled in the crevice. "Someone forced entry," I said, heart pounding. "Or they were trying to create an exit without being seen." Anya nodded. "Let's check the wing." We slipped out of the library and moved cautiously through the hallway. Tapestries of pastoral scenes lined the walls, and the silence was so dense it pressed against our eardrums. At the corridor's end, a set of heavy doors led to the East Wing. I pushed it open, and the aroma of damp wood and aged fabric greeted us. Rows of closed doors marked guest rooms and private studies, some occupied, some not. A faded sign indicated the old caretaker's quarters, but the key slot beside the door was shattered. "Someone tried to get in here," I murmured. Anya examined the lock, and maybe found it locked from the inside. We moved down the hall until we reached the conservatory entrance. I paused, checking the ornate handle, untouched. But inside, the palms and orchids cast long shadows in the low light. A soft creak echoed. We both froze. A figure stepped out from behind a tall, potted fern, a woman in a crisp uniform, eyes wide. "Miss Mercer? Miss Anya?" she said, voice trembling. "Pardon me, I thought I heard." It was Lucy, the head housekeeper. Her neat bun and pressed uniform spoke of decades of service. Her eyes darted between us. "Lucy, is everything all right?" I asked. She swallowed. "I found this by the caretaker's door," she said, extending a small envelope sealed with plain wax. I took it. Inside was a folded note. "Don't trust the board meeting. No signature." My pulse spiked. The handwriting was unsteady, personal, an internal warning. Before I could ask Lucy more, a distant chime echoed from the grand staircase. The dinner gong. The house staff would not wait. I slipped the note into my pocket. "Thank you, Lucy," I said softly. "Keep this between us." She nodded, whisking away like a shadow. Anya and I hurried back to the foyer, where Julian was waiting. The dining hall doors stood open, revealing a long table laid with china and silver, candelabras flickering. Aunt Lorraine and Mr. Aldridge were already seated alongside members of the manor staff, gardeners, cooks, and the chartered accountants handling the estate books. The hush fell again as we entered. Lorraine snapped a napkin at her side and raised an eyebrow. "Well, do join us." I slid into my place beside Anya. Across the table, Henry fidgeted with his wine glass, Reverend Matthews praying beneath his breath. Julian rose, raising a glass of sparkling water. "To Grandma Agnes," he said, voice ringing clear. "May her memory inspire unity and purpose." Glasses clinked. The first course, pumpkin soup with crusty bread, was served. Conversation fluttered like moths around the flame, polite, cautious, until the waiter cleared the plates and brought the main course, roast pheasant with root vegetables. I noticed Aunt Lorraine eyeing us intently, suspicion etched deep in her brow. I took a breath, recalling Lucy's warning. The board meeting loomed tomorrow. I needed allies. I leaned toward Anya, voice soft. During the meeting, propose a review of the board's membership, if any of Grandma's confidants were replaced. Anya nodded, understanding. Across the table, Henry cleared his throat. "I've been reviewing the estate's finances," he began, voice hesitant. "There are significant funds allocated to the East London project. I'm concerned about oversight." Lorraine's fork clattered. "I appointed Reverend Matthews to supervise those." I raised a hand. "Let's not argue now. Tomorrow, let's set a formal agenda." Lorraine's gaze cut to me, but she said nothing. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Memories of Grandma's birthday parties, the best summer hikes. Laughter slipped through tension like brittle glass. Yet under the table, I felt the envelope bulge in my pocket, a reminder that not all was as it seemed. Dinner concluded with a platter of spiced apple tarts, and we rose to leave the table. I caught Lucy's eye as she passed, and she gave a subtle nod of encouragement. As I ascended the staircase beside Anya, I realized that trust would be in short supply tomorrow, but at least we had a head start. Dawn broke over Devonshire in a haze of lavender mist, light filtering through the tall mullioned windows of Windermere Manor, like the gentle hand of reassurance. I rose early, the weight of anticipation settling in my chest like a stone. Today was the board meeting, the moment that would define whether Anya and I could forge a partnership or shatter the fragile bond our grandmother had decreed. In the huge oak-paneled library, I found Anya already there, dressed in a charcoal gray pantsuit that complemented her steel blue eyes. The Foundation's board members, philanthropists, project managers, and longtime advisors sat around the long table, papers neatly stacked before them. Aunt Lorraine presided at the head, her posture regal but tension taut in her shoulders. Henry glanced at me, his jaw tight, while Reverend Matthews folded his hands in his lap, a silent prayer on his lips. Mr. Aldridge and Julian Pierce took seats at opposite ends, their presence a reminder that we balanced on a legal and moral fulcrum. The hush was absolute, until Lorraine cleared her throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice coldly polite, "welcome to the inaugural board meeting of the Agnes Mercer Foundation. As executor and chair, I call this meeting to order." I caught Anya's gaze. We nodded imperceptibly, our unspoken agreement shimmering between us. Lorraine laid out the first agenda item, approval of the meeting minutes, an innocuous start. But I observed Lorraine's gloved hands tremble as she held the pen, as though she feared the ink might betray her. Henry raised his hand. "I'd like to propose we move to item 2, election of co-trustees, as per grandmother's letter." Lorraine's eyes flickered. "We'll follow the scheduled order," she replied. Anya spoke up, voice steady. "Given the urgency and the cooperative requirement, it makes sense to confirm our trustee roles first. My sister and I are prepared to serve jointly." Lorraine's lips curled with thin disdain. "The Foundation's bylaws require a majority vote by board members. It's not solely my decision." Julian interjected. "Technically, the decree appointing co-trustees stands. The board can ratify it now to avoid future disputes." Lorraine's composure faltered. She leaned back. "Very well." He handed out 2 ballots. Anya and I each took one, marking our own names side by side. As I slid the paper into the box, a flutter of relief passed through me. But I kept my expression neutral. Henry tallied the votes. I watched his lips move silently as he counted. When he spoke, his tone was respectful. "By unanimous vote, Rosalind Mercer and Anya Mercer are named co-trustees of the Agnes Mercer Foundation." Applause sounded politely around the table. Lorraine maintained her stiff posture but did not applaud. Anya and I exchanged a quick, victorious glance. But the storm clouds of challenge had not yet passed. Lorraine's gaze bore into us. "Now that's settled," she said, voice clipped. "Let's move on to Project East London. There have been delays and cost overruns. I propose Reverend Matthews take immediate oversight." Before anyone could reply, I intervened. "With respect, Aunt Lorraine, Grandma's letter emphasized transparency. I believe a joint oversight committee, Anya, myself, and Reverend Matthews, would ensure fidelity to her vision." Lorraine's eyes narrowed. "That wasn't specified." Julian nodded. "The letter specified only that both trustees cooperate. A committee aligns with that mandate." Lorraine considered, then scrawled notes. "Very well, we'll form the committee. Next, reports on the Scotland properties." As discussion continued, the door at the far end clicked. In stepped Lucy, the head housekeeper, glancing nervous but determined. Lorraine raised an eyebrow. "Lucy?" Lucy approached. "Pardon the interruption, Ms. Mercer. I've discovered this behind the caretaker's office. It might be pertinent." She handed a small leather-bound journal. I recognized Grandma's handwriting. I took it gently. Lorraine gasped. "Where did you find that?" Lucy's voice trembled. "In the conservatory wedged behind the base of the rose grafting bench. It's her personal notes." I opened the journal, skimming the entries. There, between musings on soil acidity, were notes about potential heirs, lists of responsibilities, and references to a secret legacy fund for grandchildren's education. "This changes everything," I murmured. Lorraine lunged. "Hand that over!" I stepped back, journal clutched to my chest. "Grandma's voice belongs to all of us. If there's more she left behind, we must honor her wishes fully." Lorraine's expression twisted, but before she could retort, Julian rose. "This agenda just got a lot more interesting." A murmur swept the room. Outside, thunder heralded the next chapter, one that could redefine Grandma's legacy and reshape our family's future. The board meeting pressed on, but the real treasure lay in those handwritten pages, waiting to reveal Grandma's final secrets. The late afternoon sun streamed through the library's leaded windows as the board members dispersed into smaller committees, animated by discoveries in Grandma's journal. Anya and I retreated to a secluded corner behind the tall bookshelves, the leather-bound volume laid open between us on a small side table. I traced the delicate script across a page titled Education Fund, Grandchildren's Trust. Beside it, margin notes detailed investments in universities, from Oxford to the University of London, and a note that I could use the funds to establish scholarships in Grandma's name. Beneath that, a sentence caught my eye. "Anya's travels have value. Recognize her experiences, that the foundation might grow." My heart leapt. Grandma had known of Anya's journey and wanted her wisdom within the foundation's work. I looked across at my sister, relief and affection washing over me. "Read this," I whispered, pointing. Anya's eyes widened as she read her grandmother's words. It's more than I ever expected," she said, voice catching. I smiled. She believed in both of us. We heard footsteps echoing nearby and quickly closed the journal. Aunt Lorraine approached, her expression inscrutable. "I trust you're finding the meeting productive?" she said, voice cool. Anya stood and placed the journal on the side table. "We are grateful for these revelations. Grandma's vision is finally clear." Lorraine nodded curtly. "Excellent. Then let's finalize the Scotland estate valuations tomorrow, and we'll adjourn." She swept away, leaving us with the golden pages and a renewed sense of purpose. As the library door clicked shut, Anya exhaled. "Can you believe how deliberate she was?" I nodded. She planned everything, even to bring us back together. Anya ducked her head and then grinned. "You know, after all this, I could use a rose cutting from her conservatory to remind us where it all began." I stood, closing the journal carefully. "Then let's go see the greenhouse." We walked through the corridor toward the east wing, passing portraits of Agnes through the years, each painting a testament to her strength and grace. In the conservatory, humidity wrapped around us like a warm embrace. The air buzzed with the hum of orchids and the sweet scent of jasmine. Sunlight filtered through the glass, illuminating the meticulous rows of roses Grandma had hybridized herself. Anya knelt beside a pale pink rose, gently lifting a petal. She called this one Perseverance. Single quote. Quote, I smiled. Fitting. As Anya selected the perfect cutting and secured it in a small glass vial, I noticed a loose floorboard near the back wall. Curious, I knelt and lifted it, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside lay several envelopes, each labeled with a year and a brief description: Charity Gala 2018, Scholarship Grant 2020, and My Breath Caught, Secret Benefaction 2022. I stood and signaled Anya over. Together, we examined the envelopes. The 2022 note was stamped with a red wax seal bearing Grandma's monogram. Shall we? I asked. Anya nodded. We broke the wax seal and unfolded the letter inside. Dear Rosalind and Anya, if you have found this, you have shown the curiosity and care that is required of true stewards. This benefaction funds the preservation of Windermere's heritage and the expansion of the Foundation's reach into communities most in need. Use it wisely, and remember that the greatest gift is love shown in action. All my love, Grandma. A sudden clap of thunder rattled the conservatory glass. Outside, dark clouds gathered once more. Anya looked at me, determination shining in her eyes. We have work to do. I closed the letter and tucked it safely into my portfolio. And we'll do it together. As we stood, united by our grandmother's final instructions, a single raindrop traced a path down the glass, nature's reminder that growth requires both sun and storm. Our partnership had begun. Midnight found the manor cloaked in hush, broken only by the soft click of my heels on the corridor's tile as I headed toward my grandmother's old study. The fire in the library had long since died to embers, and most of the household slept, or pretended to, yet sleep eluded me. The secrets we'd unearthed demanded action, and my mind buzzed with plans for the Foundation's next steps. As I passed beneath a portrait of Grandma Agnes at 26, her gaze seemed to follow, offering silent encouragement. I paused, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of responsibility transform into a spark of purpose. My study door, an antique oak with brass fittings, was unlocked. I stepped inside, the lamplight casting a warm glow over the mahogany desk. On it, the scattered remnants of my preparations: ribbon samples for the scholarship ceremony, notes on the East London project, and a single photograph of my sister and me as children, grinning in front of Grandma's roses. I picked up the photo, tracing our joyful faces. Anya's laughter in that picture felt like a promise that we could reclaim what we'd lost. I placed it in my blazer pocket and moved to the desk. Time was precious. Tomorrow's board agenda needed firming. But first, a moment of reflection. I reached for the leather-bound journal, the one Grandma had hidden in the conservatory. Turning to the index, I found a list of key correspondents: grant recipients, foundation partners, and secret advisors. My eyes lingered on that last entry. Who were these advisors? And what knowledge did Grandma entrust only to them? Before I could ponder further, the door creaked. I straightened and turned. Anya slipped inside, gown flowing, eyes bright with the same restless energy. Burning the midnight oil? She asked, stepping forward. I nodded. I want to map out the grant cycle, but also discover who these advisors are. She crossed the room and placed a hand on my shoulder. I've been thinking. The Foundation needs a public face. You have the legal background, but I have grassroots experience. I can lead outreach. Her words settled like a balm. I was thinking the same. We worked in tandem, my pen dancing across legal outlines, her sketches of community events filling margins. By 2 a.m., we'd drafted a preliminary grant framework and a list of potential advisory names: scholarship alumni, long-term staff members, and one puzzling entry. MM. MM could be anyone. My grandmother's maiden name was Mercer, so that repeated initial might hint at someone outside the family. As I placed the journal back on the shelf, a soft thud echoed from the hallway. We froze. Anya frowned. Did you hear that? I nodded, heart quickening. We moved to the door and cracked it open. In the dim corridor, Lucy hovered, clutching her shawl. "Miss Mercer?" she murmured. "Forgive me for interrupting, but you should see this." She held out a folded sheet, an unsigned note in a careful script. "Meet me in the gardener's shed at dawn." Alone. My pulse raced. The gardener's shed was in the northwest corner of the estate, near the old yew tree. It was rarely visited. "Who gave this to you?" I asked. Lucy shook her head. "It was slipped under my door. No one saw." Anya took the note and read aloud. "At dawn. Alone." I exchanged a glance with my sister. This had the ring of danger, but also promise. An unseen ally or a trap? "I'll go," I decided. "Anya, keep the journal safe, and call Julian if I don't return by sunrise." Quote. Lucy stepped back. "Be careful, Ms. Mercer." I nodded and slipped the note into my pocket. As I turned to leave, she added, "I'll make sure the path is clear." I descended the staircase, cloak billowing behind me. The manor was a sleeping giant. Windows dark, lanterns dim. Outside, a sliver of moon guided me. Through the garden, rose petals glistened with dew. A narrow stone path led toward the gardener's shed, its red door faintly illuminated by a lone lantern. As I approached, I saw him, a tall figure silhouetted against the door. My breath caught. The shape stepped forward into the lantern's light, revealing a face I never expected. My childhood friend, Marcus Wilton, now grown into a man with silver in his hair but the same gentle eyes. "Rosalind," he whispered, voice thick with emotion, "I've been waiting." My heart thundered. The dawn was coming, our destinies were about to collide. The lantern's flicker cast long shadows across the worn wood planks of the gardener's shed. My breath formed mist in the cold dawn air as I stepped forward, heart slamming against my ribs. Marcus Wilton stood in the doorway, face a mask of urgency and relief. "Marcus?" I whispered, voice trembling. "What? Why are you here?" His eyes, once bright and carefree when we were children racing through Grandma's rose garden, now held a weight that sent shivers down my spine. "Grandma trusted me with something," he began, voice low. "She knew I'd come when the time was right." He stepped forward as I entered the shed. The door groaned shut behind me. Inside, the air was thick, with the scent of soil and aged wood. A single workbench held gardening tools and a dusty crate, the kind Grandma used to keep her prized ginseng bulbs. Marcus closed the door and pulled a folded piece of parchment from his coat pocket. His hand shook as he handed it to me. I recognized the seal immediately, Grandma's crest, imprinted in deep red wax. "Secret advisor," I murmured, unfolding the parchment. The ivory paper crackled beneath my fingers. Marcus watched, exhaling a breath he'd been holding. "She called you to this shed, knew you'd find it. That journal entry, the code, MM, wasn't another person. It was Master Mercer, a pseudonym she used for personal confidences." My mind raced. So the advisors were me and Grandma? I asked, looking up. He shook his head. "Not exactly. MM refers to the Mercer Manifesto, a secret charter Grandma wrote to guide the foundation beyond the legal documents. It's a blueprint for her vision, how to use the estate and the foundation to uplift communities long after we're gone." He passed me the parchment. The header read in flourished script, "Mercer Manifesto, for the stewards of Agnes Mercer's legacy." Beneath it, bullet points outline directives: preserve heritage, promote education, protect the environment, foster artistry, maintain family unity. "You're the one she chose to decipher it," Marcus said softly. "I'm here to help. We studied codes together, you remember?" Memories stirred. Grandpa teaching us Morse code under the greenhouse roof. Marcus leaving secret messages in the flower beds. Grandma would smile, telling us that knowledge was the true bloom. I traced my finger over the words. Stewards must meet thrice annually under the yew tree to ensure unity. Keys to the manifesto lie in the horticultural records. Whispered lessons in the roses. My breath caught. The whispers in the roses, the order of plantings in the conservatory, the grafting patterns, encoded coordinates, guiding us to hidden wisdom. Marcus knelt by the crate and lifted the lid, revealing a faded horticultural ledger. It contained hand-drawn diagrams of plant grafts and rose spacing, annotated with marginalia in Grandma's flowing hand. I reached for it. We need to decode this. He nodded, eyes shining with purpose. She anticipated that you'd need help, someone who knows you beyond titles and deeds. Outside, the first rays of sunlight pierced the morning mist, illuminating the shed's dusty interior. The world felt refreshed, as though waiting for our next move. I folded the manifesto and placed it in my portfolio. We'll do this, but we need to be careful. Aunt Lorraine, she's already suspicious of us. Marcus stood, brushing dirt from his coat. I've arranged for my greenhouse worker to analyze the plant patterns. They're sworn to secrecy. You'll have what you need by tonight. I exhaled, feeling the weight of Grandma's legacy settle within me like fertile soil. Thank you, I said, voice soft. He offered a gentle smile, the old warmth between us flickering back to life. It's what she would have wanted. We emerged into the dawn light, the manor looming behind us, silent yet brimming with promise. My sister's note trembled in my pocket, an echo of the path we must walk, alone when needed, together in vision. As we parted at the garden gate, Marcus slipped a small key into my hand, a key shaped like a rosebud. To the conservatory's secret drawer, he whispered. I slipped the key into my pocket and watched him disappear into the mists. The morning breeze carried the scent of roses and rain, renewing the world. I tightened my grip on the manifesto and rose to ascend the garden steps back toward the manor. Every thread of Grandma's tapestry was within reach now. Tomorrow, at the next board meeting, we would reveal her secret blueprint, but tonight, the Mercer Manifesto would guide us, and the foundation would bloom anew. The next morning, the Mercer Manifesto felt like a charter guiding every careful breath I took. I met Anya in the conservatory before dawn, the secret drawer revealed under the rosebud key, its contents as radiant as Grandma's dreams. Inside lay a small notebook, scraps of poetry, a map of the estate's hidden water channels, and a list of charitable triggers, thresholds of donations that would unlock additional funds for emerging projects. As the first light fell across the fragrant blooms, we pored over each line. Should the East London initiative span 3 boroughs and social housing sectors, release the Community Growth Fund, an additional £500,000. Should the Scotland programs establish 2 new scholarships for rural students, unlock the Heritage Preservation Fund. I traced the words, spine-tingling. Grandma's foresight had prepared for our determination. Anya looked at me, her hand trembling as she set the notebook on the marble bench. She truly thought of everything. Before we could delve deeper, the conservatory doors opened and Aunt Lorraine glided in, eyes sharp. She held the morning papers, a financial supplement detailing the foundation's skyrocketing valuation. Behind her, Henry and Reverend Matthews hovered. Lorraine's voice was measured. Good morning. I thought you would like to see that the board's decision to ratify the co-trustees has already boosted confidence among our donors. She paused, her gaze piercing mine. We'll need to present midday updates at the charity luncheon. Anya rose, smoothing her suit. Of course, we were just reviewing Grandma's final directives. Lorraine arched an eyebrow. Directive? I hesitated, then stood, feeling Anya's steady presence beside me. Yes. We discovered her manifesto and intend to align our projects accordingly. Lorraine's lips tightened. I trust you will share everything at the board meeting. I nodded, suppressing a surge of triumph. We had the blueprint, and the first public presentation would cement our leadership. At the midday luncheon in the grand hall, chandeliers glittered above a long table laden with platters of canapés and delicate tea sandwiches. Patrons, philanthropists, and local dignitaries chatted eagerly about the foundation's impact. Julian Pierce introduced me to the assembled guests. Miss Mercer will now share the latest developments. I rose, clearing my throat as cameras clicked. I spoke of our partnership with East London Housing Councils, the Scholarship Fund for Scottish Students, and the unveiling of the Community Growth Fund. I outlined, in broad strokes, the principles from the manifesto, preserving heritage, empowering youth, supporting the arts, and how each project would honor Grandma's vision. As I spoke, I saw Lucy in the gallery, her pride shining in her steady smile. In the front row, Anya conferred quietly with Julian, nodding at strategic details. After the applause, conversations hummed with excitement. Offers of new grants were made, and my inbox pinged with emails pledging support. Yet beneath the glow of success, I felt the faintest stirrings of unease. Grandma's watchers were still out there, and our triumph today might fuel resistance tomorrow. When the luncheon ended, Anya and I slipped away to the greenhouse wing, the scent of rain-slicked roses greeting us. "We're on track," Anya said softly. But Lorraine's glances grow colder. I nodded. We must stay one step ahead. We turned our attention back to the manifesto's map. There was still more to uncover. The canal locks under the West Terrace, the hidden archive beneath the library floor, and the final cipher that would reveal the ultimate purpose of Grandma's estate. As the afternoon sun warmed the glass panes, I realized that our greatest challenge was not the board's resistance, but unlocking the full scope of our inheritance's power and defending it at every turn. And somewhere within the whispered lines of the manifesto lay the map to Grandma's ultimate legacy and our future. Late that evening, after the estate had settled into a hush and the last of the board members' cars had disappeared down the long drive, I returned to the manor's lower archives. The secret panel behind the library's rear bookshelf still lay open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into cool stone corridors. I carried only a dim lantern, its flame flickering against the rough-hewn walls. Each step I took felt like entering the heart of Grandma's legacy, one carved in stone and secrecy. At the bottom, the corridor split into two halls. To my left, the gentle trickle of underground water called to me. To my right, the soft glow of lantern light danced on metal racks. I turned first toward the water. The corridor widened into a vaulted chamber where crystal-clear water pooled in channels beneath a carved relief of a rosebush. Engraved in the stone arch above, in Grandma's handwriting, read, "Water, the source of life, let it nourish our cause." A low sluice gate controlled the flow, its mechanism labeled with the initials FC. Beneath the gate, a brass plaque read, "Fund Catalyst." I tested the lever and felt resistance. This was no mere decoration. Pulling the lever released a soft rush, filling the pool with fresh water that glittered like liquid diamonds. I peered into the channel. A small door at water level swung open, revealing what looked like metal boxes tethered to the channel walls. Climbing down carefully, I retrieved one box. It was waterproofed and embossed with the foundation's crest. I pried it open to reveal a series of documents. Titles of microgrants Grandma had seeded decades ago, funds set aside for local artisans, startups, and community gardens. Forgotten treasures waiting to bloom. My heart pounded. This fund catalyst mechanism would unlock resources we'd only just begun to imagine. I replaced the box, closed the gate, and emerged onto the cobblestone floor. Turning toward the other corridor, I walked toward the metal racks, illuminated by a single lantern. The racks held rows of jars, pressed flowers, dried petals, and small bottles of essential oils. Labels dated from the 1950s through the 2020s documented Grandma's botanical experiments. At the far end, a heavy chest sat on a wheeled cart. Grandma's codex lay atop it, inscribed, "The Seed Vault." I unlatched it, lifting the heavy lid to reveal dozens of vials. Rare seeds, heirloom, and endangered varieties preserved for future generations. Beyond the seeds lay a narrow leather-bound tome, Agrarian Agreements, a ledger of partnerships with farmers, community leaders, and cooperative networks in rural Scotland, East London, and Devonshire. Each entry detailed terms of collaboration, how land would be shared, profits distributed, and knowledge exchanged. It was the final piece. Grandma's vision not just for charity, but for sustainable community ecosystems, interconnected gardens of human compassion and resilience. I felt a surge of awe. My grandmother had built an empire of goodwill, encoded in architecture, water channels, seeds, and soil. As I turned to leave, footsteps echoed above. I froze. Aunt Lorraine's voice drifted down the stairs, soft but urgent. "Rosalind? Marcus?" My chest tightened. I hadn't expected company. I paused, considering. The final board meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. The foundations of our legacy were in place, but revelation had to be measured. Steeling myself, I climbed, sealing the panel behind me. The manor creaked ominously as I emerged into the library's soft glow. Lorraine stood by the hearth, eyes fierce. Marcus stepped in behind her, his expression unreadable. "You went inside," Lorraine said, accusation and awe mingling in her tone. "This was your grandmother's private archive." I held her gaze. "This is our grandmother's legacy. It belongs to all her stewards." Marcus stepped forward, handing me a small package. "You might need this," he said. Inside was a silver locket, engraved with Grandma's monogram. It opened to reveal a portrait of her as a young woman, and a tiny key beneath. Lorraine's eyes softened. "Perhaps she meant for you to have this, Rosalind." I clasped the locket, feeling the weight of generations. This is just the beginning. Outside, a distant thunderclap echoed through the night. The journey to sustain Grandma's vision had only just begun, and every secret unveiled pledged new challenges and deeper rewards. The early morning chill hung heavy in the air as I approached the grand hall, the echoes of last night's thunder still reverberating through the manor's stone corridors. My heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and dread. Today would mark the most significant board session yet, the unveiling of the Mercer Manifesto's final directives, and the formal launch of the fund catalyst. Anya was already gathered with Julian and Mr. Aldridge by the parquet floor's intricate inlay, whispering over documents. She looked up and gave me a determined nod as I entered the room. Aunt Lorraine sat poised at the head of the table, flanked by Reverend Matthews and Henry, their expressions carefully neutral, but their eyes betraying anticipation. I closed the massive oak door behind me and drew a slow breath. The board members took their seats, the polished mahogany gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. I approached the lectern, placed the manifesto before me, and let silence settle like velvet. "Thank you all for convening on such short notice," I began, voice steady. "We have crossed many milestones since Grandma Agnes left us her legacy. But today, we cement the heart of her vision." I opened the manifesto to the final section. The Mercer Mandate, a legacy of living gardens. I read the passages aloud, each line painting a tapestry of interconnected projects. When the fund catalyst is engaged, our gardens shall serve as learning centers, community hubs, and sanctuaries for all. Through scholarships, microgrants, and heritage preservation, we will cultivate not only plants, but people. I paused, letting the weight of the words resonate. Lorraine's gaze flickered. Anya's hand closed over mine in silent support. "Today, we activate the fund catalyst," I continued, harnessing the water channels beneath our feet and the seed vault awaiting tomorrow's springs. We will launch 3 flagship initiatives: the Rosewood Educational Gardens in East London, the Highland Heritage Orchards, and the Community Seed Exchange. As murmurs of approval rippled, I signaled to Marcus, who entered from the side door carrying the gardening ledger we'd decoded. He placed it on the lectern. "This ledger contains the precise cultivars Grandma chose: roses for resilience, apples for abundance, heirloom vegetables for sustenance," I explained. "Each variety carries a lesson: patience, hardship, growth. Our community programs will mirror these lessons, teaching stewardship and solidarity." Lorraine exhaled, leaning forward. "And what of the financial mechanisms?" I nodded. "We open the sluice gates of resources. The first microgrant pool of £100,000 goes live immediately to support community gardeners. The secondary pool will match grants from local councils by 50%. Julian interjected. "The legal framework is prepared. Contracts are ready for signatures." He passed a stack of documents toward Lorraine. Lorraine's pen glided across the lines, her handwriting firm. As she signed, Henry and Reverend Matthews followed suit. At last, it was my turn. As I affixed my signature, a tremor shook the room, like an announcement from deep within the earth. The portraits above the fireplace rattled. Anya and I shared a startled glance. From outside came a chorus of voices, family and staff converging on the grand hall's windows, drawn by the seismic shift. A voice called out, "Rosalind, open the doors! The villagers from Eastwick have arrived!" I stepped back as the massive doors swung inward. A delegation of local growers, students, and council members poured in, faces bright with hope. At their forefront stood Mayor Caldwell, holding a basket of freshly harvested produce from Windermere's gardens. He offered it toward me. "On behalf of Eastwick," he said, voice ringing clear, "we accept Grandma's gift and pledge to nurture it." Tears pricked my eyes as I accepted the basket. The hall erupted in whispered exclamations and applause. Not the polite clapping of a luncheon, but genuine, joyous celebration. Lorraine rose to her feet, her usual reserve softened by the moment's warmth. She turned to me. "Grandma's legacy lives on in her people," she said softly. I stepped forward, extending my hand to Anya and Lorraine in unison. "Together," I said. United in purpose, we looked out at the sea of faces, our first true community. The Mercer mandate had come alive. But as the doors closed behind the cheering crowd, a single envelope floated in through a high window, landing at my feet. It bore only one word: beware. I picked it up, my pulse racing. The final test was yet to come. The dusk sky over Windermere Manor glowed with bruised shades of purple and gold as I returned to my grandmother's favorite spot, the rose-covered gazebo perched at the edge of the western terrace. The charity luncheon's success still buzzed beneath my skin, but that ominous envelope lay heavy in my pocket, its single-word warning pressing like a shadow. I paused at the arched entrance, vines tangled in delicate patterns around the white columns. The air smelled of wet earth and rose petals crushed beneath the afternoon's footsteps. I reached inside my coat and withdrew the envelope, turning it over in my hand. No letter opener, just the original seal, cracked and hanging loose. Pulling it gently, I slipped out the single sheet of cream-colored stationery. The word beware was all it bore. No signature, no cursive loops to indicate who sent it. My breath caught as I realized how many enemies I'd made. Aunt Lorraine, spurned by the manifesto's revelations. The Reverend, whose reputation teetered. Even strangers who might have coveted Grandma's wealth. A rustle behind me. I whirled to see Marcus stepping through the gravel path, his lantern glowing softly. "You looked like you might need company," he said quietly. I tucked the envelope into my pocket. "Someone's warning me," I said, "but I don't know why or who." Marcus's expression tightened. "I've warned you that not all guardians of Grandma's legacy are visible. Many secrets sleep beneath these gardens." His words echoed the manifesto's caution. Grandma had embedded safeguards not just in documents, but in the estate itself, trusting only those she believed would honor her vision. I gestured toward the gazebo's benches. "Let's sit. Did you notice anyone at the luncheon acting out of turn?" He followed me to the weathered white benches, their paint chipped by time and sun. The fountain near the gazebo murmured softly, its waters fed by the same channels we had activated. "Most were supportive," Marcus began, "but I saw something. When you announced the microgrants, Miss Caldwell from Eastwick, the mayor's wife, her smile flickered. She looked concerned. And then there was Mr. Hayes, the local councilman. He didn't approach when everyone else did." I frowned. "Councilman Hayes, isn't he investigating farmers near the West Terrace, accusing them of diverting manor water?" Marcus nodded. "Yes. If he sees the fund catalyst empowering villagers, it undermines his case." My pulse raced. He could be the one who sent the envelope, trying to intimidate me into halting the grant releases. We sat in silence, the lantern's glow battling dusk. The roses above us drooped in fragrant clusters. "There's more," Marcus continued. "This morning, before dawn, I caught Reverend Matthews leaving the archives. He wasn't supposed to be there." My jaw clenched. The Reverend, once a guardian of Grandma's memoirs, had tried manipulating the archives, perhaps to control which secrets emerged. "He didn't see me," Marcus said, "but I suspect he plans to replace a key document, one that could alter the benefaction triggers." Shock and betrayal mingled. "We need proof," I whispered. Marcus nodded. "I'll set a watch. You should confront Hayes first." I exhaled. The path forward was clear. Determine the sender of the warning, secure the archives, and ensure the fund catalyst mechanisms remained untainted. But first, Councilman Hayes. I rose, the gravel crunching underfoot. "Come, let's head to the council office." The manor's gates closed behind us as we drove away, the octagonal windows of the gazebo glowing behind. The council building was a modest brick structure, floodlit at night for 24-hour access, a legacy of Mayor Caldwell's urban revival plan. Inside, I navigated the marbled hallway to Hayes's office. His door, bearing the nameplate A. Hayes, council member, water oversight, stood ajar. I knocked lightly. "Councilman Hayes, it's Rosalind Mercer." He looked up from a mountain of papers cluttering his desk. His face was haggard, dark circles under his eyes, his tie askew. "Grandma's granddaughter," he said, rising. His handshake was brief, his gaze wary. "What brings you here at this hour?" I stepped in, closing the door. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about the water rights. I'd like to clarify how the fund catalyst works, so your concerns about diversion can be addressed." He narrowed his eyes. "I'm busy. My case against the farmers is nearly ready for review. I don't need interference." I placed my hand gently on his arm. "I came to ask for your help. Support from your office would ensure the microgrants reach those who need them. If you help me, I can withdraw any concerns about water misuse." His posture froze. "You're using grand gestures to sway me?" I shook my head. "I'm offering partnership. My grandmother believed in community synergy. She'd want you involved, not adversarial." Hayes's gaze flickered, betraying conflict. He sank into his chair. "Perhaps, but I'll need formal documents." I smiled, relief flooding me. "I'll deliver them at first light." As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. "One more thing," he said. "I heard rumors about the archives. Be careful what you unearth, Mercer. Some stones are best left unturned." My pulse hammered, but I nodded. "Thank you for your honesty." Back in the car, I exhaled. Hayes was wavering. I'd won him, but his warning spoke of deeper tensions in the council. Marcus waited at the gates, hooded under the street lamp. "Hayes will cooperate, for now," I said, "but we have eyes in every shadow." He touched my arm. "Then we must be shadows ourselves, always watching, always ready." Quote. The manor loomed behind us, its windows dark sentinels. The fund catalyst would flow come dawn, but the battle for Grandma's legacy had truly begun. That night, as I lay awake in the guest wing, I thought of the roses drifting in the breeze outside my window. Their scent was a promise. Growth, resilience, renewal. At sunrise, the first waters would flow. Whether they nourished or drowned, our vision remained to be seen. The first light of dawn seeped through the tall windows of Windermere Manor, turning the stone columns a soft rose gold. I watched from my bedroom window as garden staff gathered in the courtyard, preparing the great sluice gates for the day's ceremony. The fund catalyst would open in mere hours, and with it, the promise of community growth, scholarship funds, and heritage preservation would spring to life. But beneath the hope, tensions simmered. Councilman Hayes's reluctant support had bought a fragile peace, but his final warning echoed in my mind. Some stones are best left unturned. I dressed in the quiet solitude of my chamber, slipping into a tailored navy dress, and fastening the silver locket Grandma had given me. The tiny portrait of her smiling face nestled against my heart, a talisman against doubt. Down in the foyer, Anya waited by the grand staircase, her expression bright despite the long night's scheming. "Ready?" she asked, offering her arm. I linked mine through hers, drawing strength from our partnership. We descended into the great hall, where board members, staff, and dignitaries convened. The parquet floor gleamed beneath polished shoes. Julia Pierce adjusted her glasses behind the lectern, while Mr. Aldridge checked the final legal documents on a side table. Aunt Lorraine arrived last, her regal posture regardless of her earlier collusion. She gave me a slight nod, an unspoken truce formed in adversity. At precisely 9 o'clock, the sluice gate lever was in position. The mayor himself, flanked by councilors and the reverend, stepped forward to pull the lever. I stood beside him, the manifesto in hand. "On behalf of the Agnes Mercer Foundation," I intoned, voice steady, "I declare the fund catalyst open." With a resounding clank, the sluice gate opened, and water poured from the stone channels into the courtyard fountain, cascading into the reflecting pool. Gasps and applause erupted as fountains sprung to life, the water glowing in morning light. Councilman Hayes exhaled, relief etched on his face. But as he turned to smile, his gaze met the path behind the main fountain, where I saw a figure slip silently behind a column. I felt a prickle. The figure wore the manor's steward uniform, a clean-cut jacket with brass buttons. It had to be Thomas, my grandmother's head groundskeeper. Loyal, discreet, always at her side. My heart raced. Was he the one behind the warning? I excused myself from the podium, citing a need to check on the seed vault behind the greenhouse. Anya followed as I navigated the side paths, flanked by blossoming roses. The hush returned, broken only by the water's murmur and our soft footsteps. Near the east wing, where the seed vault's secret door hid beneath rose trellises, I spotted Thomas crumpling something into his pocket. We paused behind a hedge. "Thomas?" I called softly, stepping into view. He turned, face pale. "Ms. Mercer, you shouldn't be here." His voice trembled. I stepped closer, locket resting against my chest. "I heard you were discreetly passing notes, warning me." He swallowed, eyes flitting to the greenhouse windows. "I was protecting the estate. The manifesto, some of its directives would upset certain families in Eastwick. I thought a warning would keep you safe." I frowned. Safety or control? He shook his head. "No, Reverend Matthews." He approached me, said the final section of the manifesto would cost too much. He offered me a permanent position abroad if I delayed the catalyst. My pulse pounded. So the Reverend had tried to bribe Thomas. The warning was a warning to stop, not to protect. I exhaled, steadying myself. "Thank you for telling me the truth. But if you want to protect the estate, stand with its true advocates." I held out my hand, the locket catching the light. "I promise you a role worthy of Grandma's trust. No more secrets." Thomas nodded, relief spreading through his features. "I'll help you, Ms. Mercer." Together, we returned to the courtyard, where the fountains now danced in patterned jets. Hayes joined us, having concluded the official ceremonies. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You've done well. But be vigilant. Ambition can lurk in the closest of hearts." I nodded, gaze drifting to the whispering crowd. Farmers, students, philanthropists, and counselors. Each held a piece of Grandma's dream. Anya approached, journal in hand. "The next step is to activate the seed vault and launch the microgrant applications. Are you ready?" I smiled, feeling the locket's warmth. "Let's unveil Grandma's final gift to the people. And let no stone be left unturned." As the crowd cheered, I realized the true inheritance was not the mansion, but the power to bring people together. One rose petal, one drop of water, and one trusted partnership at a time. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the greenhouse's glass panels as Anya and I prepared to unlock the seed vault for public distribution. Rows of rare heirloom tomatoes, ancient grain kernels, and vibrant flower seeds lay in their vials, ready to sow new beginnings in communities across Devonshire and East London. The air hummed with anticipation as local growers, scholarship recipients, and foundation staff gathered to witness the ceremony. Julian Pierce stood at the entrance, checking his watch. "They'll be here any minute," he said, adjusting his glasses. The greenhouse doors remained closed, preserving the atmosphere and staging the reveal. Inside, I traced my fingers over the Mercer Manifesto's guidelines. Distribute seeds in sets of community kits, paired with microgrants to fund initial plantings. The first 100 kits would include Shropshire Heritage wheat, Devonshire oak apples, and Grandma's hybrid Perseverance rose seeds, an emblem of resilience. Anya stepped beside me, holding the key from Marcus. "Ready?" she asked. Her steel blue eyes glowed with excitement. I nodded, lifting the seed vault's lock. The key turned with a satisfying click. The chest's lid rose to reveal the organized vials, each marked with delicate calligraphy. But before I could reach for the first vial, the greenhouse doors swung open. Aunt Lorraine entered, pale and composed. Behind her, Reverend Matthews followed, his clerical collar crisp. Both wore uneasy expressions, as though drawn by duty rather than enthusiasm. Lorraine approached the seed chest. "I hope this isn't too late," she said, voice steady. "Councilman Hayes just informed me of a funding hiccup. The microgrant pool's transfer encountered a bank error." A hush fell. Anya's brow furrowed. "A bank error these days?" she asked, skepticism in her tone. I exhaled, calm but alert. Could be a simple mistake. Let's resolve it after the ceremony. Lorraine inclined her head, but her eyes flicked to the vials. Then by all means, continue. She stepped back, relinquishing the moment. I took a deep breath and lifted the first vial, the Shropshire wheat. I held it aloft as the assembled growers leaned forward. By the authority of the Mercer Manifesto, I declared, voice ringing in the humid air, I present the Seed Vault's bounty, to be shared with communities for growth and renewal. May these seeds carry hope into every field they touch. Applause broke as I handed the wheat kit to Mr. Carter, an elder farmer whose land bordered the manor's west terrace. His hands trembled as he accepted the vial. One by one, I distributed the kits. Apples to Mrs. Elkin, a community organizer in East London, roses to the Evergreen Youth Alliance, grains to scholarship recipients who vowed to plant demonstration plots on campus. The ceremony concluded with laughter and promises. Social media already abuzz with #MercerSeeds hashtags. Yet, as I smiled for photographs, I sensed movement at the greenhouse's far end. Thomas stood near a side entrance, his expression grim. He discreetly motioned me over. I followed him behind the towering rows of orchids. He leaned in. Grandma's ledger, the agrarian agreements. We need to sign them today. They legalize the partnerships for these seed kits. I can't find the draft copies. Alarmed, I replied, I thought Julian had finalized the agreements. Thomas shook his head. He left earlier. He said he'd deliver after the ceremony. A knot formed in my stomach. Without signed agreements, the microgrants cannot be dispersed. The partnerships cannot be honored. I scanned the crowd, Lorraine conferring with Hayes, Anya showing seedlings to children, Marcus adjusting his camera for documentation, and Julian, gone. My pulse quickened. Had Julian been delayed, or had someone taken the documents? The Reverend had been near the desk earlier. Could his intervention extend beyond the archives? Thank you, Thomas, I whispered. Stay here. I'll retrieve the copies. I hurried to the administrative office, adjacent to the greenhouse. Inside, piles of papers, laptops, and coffee cups cluttered the desk. I rifled through the files, grant applications, press releases, but no legal binders. A sudden noise startled me. I turned to see Reverend Matthews in the doorway, his expression composed, but eyes hard. Looking for something? He asked. I squared my shoulders. Yes, the agrarian agreements. The signed drafts should be here. He stepped aside. I haven't seen them, but I did find this. He held a sealed envelope with the foundation's crest. My breath caught. Where did you? I collected them for safekeeping, he said calmly. I can give them to you, but only if certain clauses are removed. Clauses that bind our local church's trust to the foundation's grants. Shock rippled through me. He sought to alter the agreements to benefit his institution. I took a steady breath. This isn't Grandma's vision, and it won't stand. The Reverend's eyes narrowed. Then you leave me no choice but to report irregularities to the board. My pulse roared, but I kept my voice calm. I'll meet you at the board meeting. The clauses are non-negotiable. Grandma's letter demands integrity. He handed me the envelope with a sigh. I'll see you then. As I opened the seal, my stomach turned. Inside lay not the agreements, but a single sheet. Remove the charity clauses or lose the seed vault. The ultimatum was clear. The final showdown loomed at the next board session, where the true battle for Grandma's legacy would be decided. The dawn light in the boardroom cut through the stained glass windows like splinters of justice and judgment. I arrived first, my shoes clicking on the marbled floor, the Mercer Manifesto tucked into my folder and my chest tight with determination. Today was the day I confronted Reverend Matthews, Aunt Lorraine, and the rest of the board over his attempt to pervert Grandma's agrarian agreements. After the greenhouse ceremony, the foundation's success had been palpable. Seed kits distributed, microgrant pledges secured, but the Reverend's threat to alter the charity clauses now threatened to undo everything. Moments later, Anya swept in, her presence like a gust of solidarity. She wasted no time collecting witnesses. Thomas, the groundskeeper turned ally, and Marcus Wilton, who had kept vigil at the archives. Julian Pierce trailed behind, legal documents in hand. Mr. Aldridge sat at the end of the long table, reviewing contract drafts, his expression unreadable. At the appointed hour, Aunt Lorraine entered, followed by Reverend Matthews, whose pall of self-righteousness seemed to fill the room. Councilman Hayes lingered near the windows, exchanging nods with several local dignitaries. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Lorraine took her place at the head of the table. "I call this special board session to address alleged irregularities in the agrarian agreements," she said, voice steely. The Reverend cleared his throat. "As executor and spiritual advisor, I have profound concerns that the charity clauses as currently written may expose the foundation to financial liabilities and legal challenges beyond Grandma's intentions. I propose we amend Clause 4B to remove the mandatory church partnership and replace it with a discretionary donation provision." Gasps rippled around the table. I pressed my palms against the folder in front of me and rose. "Grandmother's agrarian agreements are explicit," I began, voice calm but firm. In her own handwriting, she decreed that the Reverend's Church shall serve as a beneficiary partner for community gardens and distribution centers, ensuring that spiritual nourishment accompanies physical growth. This was her vision. Reverend Matthews' eyes narrowed. "I have provided an envelope of proposed revisions and a legal opinion from St. Matthew's Legal Society supporting my position." He slid a thick packet toward Lorraine. "I believe this will safeguard the foundation's long-term viability." Anya rose, her voice echoing in the hush. "Viability at what cost? Grandma entrusted us as stewards to carry out her legacy. If we rescind these clauses, we betray her trust, and the thousands of community members who rely on our partnerships." Marcus stood, producing a letter of support from Eastwick's mayor, attesting to the church's pivotal role in distributing resources during past crises. Without the church's network, the microgrants and seeds would never reach the most vulnerable communities, he said. Hayes stepped forward, glancing between us. "I side with Rosalind and Anya. As council member, I've seen how the church coordinated water distribution during last year's drought. Their grassroots reach is unmatched. Reverend, your amendment would undermine decades of goodwill." The Reverend's composure flickered. He glanced at Lorraine for support, but Aunt Lorraine's expression was unreadable. An intricate tapestry of loyalty to Grandma's memory and exasperation at the conflict. I seized the moment. According to the Mercer Manifesto and the agrarian agreements, any amendment must be ratified by a 2/3 majority of the board. I move we hold an immediate vote, uphold Clause 4B as written, or adopt the Reverend's modifications. Lorraine raised an eyebrow. "Are you certain? This is a dramatic escalation." I met her gaze. "Yes, I'm certain." Grandma anticipated disagreements among stewards. She provided both the Methodist, the manifesto triggers, and the bylaws for conflict resolution. We must follow them. Julian Pierce handed out ballots. We each marked our choice: uphold or amend. The tension was palpable as Henry, Reverend Matthews, and Aunt Lorraine cast theirs. Thomas and Marcus voted to uphold. The council members and foundation advisors crowned the tally. When Henry finally spoke, "It's unanimous. Clause 4B stands as written." Relief and triumph washed over the boardroom. Reverend Matthews's face paled. Lorraine cleared her throat. "Then it is decided. We uphold Grandma's agreement in full." The Reverend bowed his head, murmuring a reluctant, "So be it." He gathered his papers and exited, leaving behind a chill of disapproval. As the doors closed, cheers erupted. Anya laughed, relief shining in her eyes. We embraced briefly, the boardroom's ornate walls bearing witness to our victory. The foundation's purpose was secure, for now. But as I gathered my documents, a knock sounded. The clerk entered, bearing another envelope, this one embossed with the crest of Harrington and Blake. I recognized the solicitor's seal and felt a prickle of foreboding. I broke the seal. Inside lay a confidential letter from the Charity Commission. An audit had been triggered by concerns about the foundation's recent rapid expansions. It demanded full financial records and proof of compliance, or risk revocation of charitable status. A hush fell as I read. The final test of Grandma's legacy would not only be in honoring her directives, but in defending the foundation's very existence against external scrutiny. I looked at Anya, at Lorraine, who had reluctantly congratulated us, and at the board members whose support now hung in balance. The room waited as I folded the letter. Then, voice steady though my heart thundered, I said, "It appears we have been warned, twice now, by those who fear the Foundation's power. Tomorrow we prepare for the Charity Commission's audit. Grandma built protections into her legacy, and now we must activate them." The boardroom's silence held the weight of destiny. Outside, the wind whispered through the corridors of Windermere Manor, carrying the promise of both challenge and renewal. Our true inheritance had only just begun its trial. The morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows of the boardroom, painting the floor in shards of ruby and gold. I stood before the assembled trustees, Anya, Aunt Lorraine, Councilman Hayes, Mr. Aldridge, Julian Pierce, Thomas, and a handful of key community representatives, holding the Charity Commission's audit notice. The weight of their gazes pressed on my shoulders, but I squared them, determined to meet the challenge head-on. "Thank you all for coming at such short notice," I began, voice steady despite the turmoil churning within. Yesterday's vote upheld Grandma's agrarian agreements, but last night we received a formal request for a full audit from the Charity Commission. They've expressed concerns over our rapid expansion and the complexity of the Mercer Manifesto's directives. A murmur rippled through the room. Aunt Lorraine's lips tightened, her composure teetering between pride in our accomplishments and anxiety over bureaucratic scrutiny. "This audit could jeopardize our charitable status if we're not fully compliant," I continued, "but I have faith that Grandma's foresight has accounted for this as well. We're here to review our safeguards and prepare a robust response." Julian Pierce stepped forward, placing the audit letter on the polished table. "I've already arranged for legal counsel specializing in charitable law. We'll need to compile financial reports, board meeting minutes, and detailed accounts of our distributions and partnerships." Mr. Aldridge adjusted his glasses. "I can oversee the document collation and ensure everything is formatted to the Commission's specifications. We have copies of every transaction, but we'll need to cross-reference them with the manifesto's triggers." Councilman Hayes cleared his throat. "The local council can provide records of water distribution and microgrant allocations. I'll have my office prepare certified statements." Thomas, standing by the window, nodded. "The grounds team and I can supply logs from the fund catalyst activation and seed vault distributions. We have time-stamped logs for each release." Anya interlaced her fingers. "I'll draft a narrative explaining the manifesto's purpose and Grandma's motivations. Humanizing the report will remind them our work is rooted in community impact, not just numbers." Aunt Lorraine's gaze softened as she surveyed our united front. "And I will write a letter to accompany our submission, expressing our commitment to transparency and alignment with charitable objectives." The collaborative spirit swelled in the room. The daunting task of the audit transformed into a rallying point, a chance to demonstrate the integrity of Grandma's legacy and the board's dedication. But as we assigned tasks, I felt a flicker of doubt. Somewhere between the deadlines and the paperwork, an unseen force threatened to undermine us. The Charity Commission's notice mentioned a tip-off that suggested misallocation of funds, an allegation that cut deeper than any financial inconsistency. It implied betrayal from within. I met Thomas's steady gaze. "Has anyone accessed the financial vault against protocol?" He shook his head solemnly. "No unauthorized entries. But someone could have manipulated the digital records if they had access." A cold realization washed over me. The Reverend's implied coercion, the bank error, the mysterious envelope, and now this audit. They all pointed to a coordinated effort to destabilize us. I cleared my throat, gathering my resolve. We must be vigilant. While we compile our report, we need to monitor internal records for any anomalies. An audit of the audit, if you will. Trustee privileges should be temporarily suspended for anyone with unsupervised access to our ledgers, until we can confirm every entry's integrity. Lorraine's brow furrowed. "You mean including me?" I met her gaze. "We're all stewards here. Until we pass the Charity Commission's scrutiny, no one is above accountability." A hush followed. Then Lorraine inhaled and nodded. "Agreed. The Foundation's integrity must come first." Julian gave a curt nod. I'll set up dual authentication controls on our financial system and arrange individual logs for all users. The plan took shape. Legal counsel engaged, narrative drafted, records secured, external and internal audits aligned. Yet beneath the strategic clarity lay a deeper urgency. We needed to unmask whoever was orchestrating these attacks before they could strike again. As the meeting adjourned, Anya and I lingered. "Do you think Grandma anticipated an attack on her foundation's reputation?" she asked, voice soft. I ran my fingers along the manifesto's leather spine. "She built in more defenses than we've seen. But I believe the final safeguard lies in the locket's key. A clue we haven't yet solved." I held out the silver rosebud locket. "It may contain the last metric for our compliance, something only she and her closest confidant knew." Anya's eyes lit. "Then let's unlock it tonight." Quote, as we stepped out into the corridor, the morning light seemed to pulse with possibility. The Charity Commission's deadline loomed, but our unity and Grandma's foresight armed us for the battle ahead. Behind us, the boardroom doors closed. Beyond them, the fate of the Agnes Mercer Foundation and every life it touched awaited our next move. The last flickers of daylight seeped through the tall windows as I stood alone in the conservatory, locket in hand. Outside, the first stars emerged, like distant candles guiding weary travelers. Tomorrow, we would face the Charity Commission's panel with our evidence, our defenses, and Grandma's legacy shining at our backs. But tonight, I needed to unlock the final safeguard. I sat at the long marble bench, the Mercer Manifesto unfolded beside me, and carefully opened the silver rosebud locket. Inside, beyond the miniature portrait, a tiny rolled parchment lay strapped with a ribbon as fine as gossamer. My fingers trembled as I extracted the parchment and unfurled it. The script was petite, meticulous, Grandma's handwriting. It read, "To the final steward. If you have reached this point, you have demonstrated unwavering commitment. The last key to our foundation's enduring strength is not in deeds or documents, but in collaboration. Combine the codes of the fund catalyst mechanism with the verses of the Garden Hymn, Grandma's poem to the estate, and present them together to unlock the Community Covenant Clause. This clause binds all trustees, advisors, and beneficiaries in a covenant of mutual accountability, ensuring that no single entity, church, council, or family member can hijack the vision. It is the ultimate seal of unity. Read the poem aloud in this chamber, and let every voice pledge allegiance to the covenant. Only then will Grandma's foundation stand unassailable. With all my love, Agnes Mercer." My breath caught. The Garden Hymn, a poem Grandma had composed, rumored to be coaxed from her heart during the manor's restoration year. I turned to the conservatory's walls, where etched fragments of verse lay hidden among carved plaster, lines about blossoms, seasons, and shared seeds sown in trust. I rose and traced my finger along the nearest inscription. "When petals fall, they carry seeds. In shared soil, our future breathes. From roots entwined in earth and heart, united hands will never part." Quote. Another verse appeared near the rose arch. "Water flows and bridges span, binding fields to kindly hands. In every bloom a promise found, collaboration's sacred ground." I closed my eyes and whispered the verses, ancient words resonating in the still air. "When petals fall, they carry seeds. In shared soil our future breathes. From roots entwined in earth and heart, united hands will never part. Water flows and bridges span, binding fields to kindly hands. In every bloom a promise found, collaboration's sacred ground." As the final syllable echoed, the soft hum of hidden gears stirred beneath the floor. A section of the marble bench slid forward, revealing a carved niche containing the Community Covenant scroll, an ornate parchment sealed with multiple wax stamps, the foundation crest, the church's seal, the council's insignia, and the Mercer family emblem. I lifted the scroll and saw beneath a line etched in silver ink. "To be enacted by oath, we pledge to serve the land, nurture all within our hand. In unity of purpose, we rise, bonded by trust, forever wise. I gathered the scroll and exited into the grand hall, where Anya, Lorraine, Hayes, Julian, and Thomas waited in solemn hush. Each held a lit candle, symbolizing their watch through the night to support this moment. I placed the scroll on the lectern and beckoned them forward. "Together," I said. In unison, we recited the verse, voices steady and clear. "We pledge to serve the land, nurture all within our hand. In unity of purpose, we rise, bonded by trust, forever wise." A gentle breeze passed through the hall, stirring the candle flames without extinguishing them, an unseen affirmation. Aunt Lorraine laid her hand on the scroll's seal, then Hayes, then Anya, Julian, and Thomas. Finally, I placed my hand atop theirs. The multiple seals glowed faintly before solidifying into a single emblem, the united crest of the Agnes Mercer Foundation. In that moment, I felt the weight of Grandma's vision settle into tangible reality. No decree, no audit, no threat could unravel what had been forged by shared oath. We stood in silent reverence as the empire of goodwill, mansion, foundation, gardens, and communities became immortal and unassailable. Outside, the Charity Commission's panel awaited our submission, but their verdict was foretold: compliant, transparent, visionary. And as the moon rose over Windermere Manor, I knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning, a covenant binding our hearts and hands for all time. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications